Welcome back to Revenue Rascals. This is Michelle Terpstra, and today we are going to talk about how to overcome the 5 biggest, most challenging B2B sales objections. We're covering price, time, trust, authority, and ROI. Without giving off that icky car salesman vibe, we're going to talk about flipping the script on objection handling. I'm going to share my favorite way of feeling comfortable talking about objections, moving through the sales process, and finding your way through some really difficult conversations. And one thing that I want everyone to remember when we go through this today is objections are part of the decision-making process. So instead of viewing them as no's every single time they come up, I want you to think about that you're actually moving through the sales process by overcoming and isolating objections. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It's time for Rascal Wrap-Up, unfiltered truth, straight talk, no fluff. Now, I'm in a really unique position. As a sales expert, as a revenue growth expert, as a business expert, when someone tries to sell something to me, I know exactly what they're doing. I know the syntax or the script that they're following. I can anticipate how they're going to overcome and isolate objections. I know exactly what they're thinking the entire time, which makes it for quite a fun process. But I will tell you, there has been some really awful trends over the years in B2B selling that just has crossed the line of sales psychology. It's pressed too hard on gaslighting. It's pressed too hard on psychological tricks. And so what I hope to provide here today for everyone listening is an alternative to the way that things have been going over the last handful of years. Because the thing is, it worked for a little bit. The slimy, the sleazy, the aggressive sales tactics, it made sales and it worked. But what happened over time is that consumers, decision makers, they all figured it out. So now as sellers, we have to pivot back to being more authentic in our sales conversations. There has been this shift away from relationship sales, and now we're coming back. And what we're going to talk about today is a way to make people feel safe in a sales conversation with you, where you can still see the success of the sale without them walking away feeling like, wow, like basically I feel naked from that conversation. And you don't want anyone to ever feel that way. So let's jump in and really just start to break this down. I'm going to go through all 5 of those top objections. This is absolutely an episode that you're going to want to share with friends. Make sure that you like the episode, you give it some reviews. I would love to see what you guys think about this. And this is one of my favorite conversations to have. So I hope that it's one of your favorites to listen to. All right, so here's the truth. Traditional objection handling, like I said, is often adversarial and outdated. We're taught to overcome these objections like it's a boxing match. Jab with a scripted rebuttal, counter any concern with a slick answer, win at all costs. It's all about overcoming, defeating the prospect's point. And if you think about it, no wonder that feels uncomfortable. Like prospects sense that when they can absolutely sense that from you. And the walls go up, right? And as great sellers, we have to take the wall down, not up. And I get it. Like when you're getting towards the end of the sales call and you can feel it slipping away and you just have the urge to fight back. But see, this is the deal, is that buyers can see this coming from a mile away. Between the AI, the oversaturation of selling both tech and services over the last 5 years, they're just anticipating this to happen. And, even as a buyer myself, I've gotten a little bit more savvy of the questions that I ask and when I'm willing to make decisions and if I'm flexible on my timing, my budget, all of these things. I've had to have some really hard conversations recently with people that really wanted to work with me. I had taken the sales call, gone to the event, and, at the end of the day, just wasn't the right fit for me. And there used to be a lot of shame around saying, no, right now is not the right time for that investment for my business. But the shame thing isn't there anymore. So you really have to be that educated buyer on both sides to understand why people are making decisions and why they're not. Now, let's add some empathy here because I'm not just ranting at sellers. I feel for sellers too, because you're under immense amount of pressure. You've got bosses, investors breathing down your neck for results, and you genuinely believe in your product. So when a prospect hesitates, it's painful to either get defensive or go on overdrive, trying to convince them hey, you've got to make this decision. But unfortunately, both reactions erode trust. And the prospect thinks all they care about is the sale, not solving my problem. And once that thought enters their mind, they're done. And in B2B, trust is everything. If they can't trust you now, how will they trust you with your solution or your support later? And so here is the mindset shift that I'm offering for this episode. And truly this masterclass in overcoming objections. An objection is not a rejection. It's an opportunity. It's a neon sign that says, I'm interested enough to voice a concern. Help me out. In fact, silence from a prospect is far more dangerous than an objection. If you've been in sales 5 minutes, a prospect who has zero questions or concerns is often the one who disappears. A prospect raising objections is mentally engaging with your offer, and hey, that's a good thing. The real problem is how we respond. Traditional sales training often skips the why behind objections. We focus on the comebacks, but not the concern. So I want you to think about this when you say, I need to talk to my boss. A pushy rep hears a roadblock and tries to bulldoze. Let's get them on the call right now. A good rep hears a legit concern. Maybe you do need your boss's buy-in and responds by enabling you to completely understand the buying cycle. Totally understand what information would help to present this to your boss. Let's arm you with a business case. See the difference? One is adversarial and the other collaborative. And can we talk about respect for a second? Old school objection handling can be downright disrespectful of the buyer's intelligence. Those canned lines can imply your concern is trivial. Let me tell you, you're wrong. Imagine that you're the buyer for a moment. You say, this timing is tough. We have a lot on our plate. And the seller quickly says, if not now, when? Will there ever be a perfect time? I mean, who hasn't had that said to them? That's a lecture, it's patronizing, and it's not a conversation. It diminishes the buyer's perspective, and no one likes to be patronized. Heck, I teach sales, and if someone tried to hokey script me on that one, I'd shut it down too. So yeah, I'm ranting because I want us to flush these outdated tactics down the drain. Enough with the combative overcoming. Try to replace it with something that's actually human conversation, empathy, active listening, and strategic guiding of the dialogue. In my world, handling objections isn't about winning an argument. It's about building a relationship. It's about acknowledging the concern, validating that the prospect isn't crazy for having it, and then peeling back the layers to get to the real issue. What I call this is AVP: acknowledge, validate, and peel. It's simple, it's respectful, and oh man, does it work. When I started doing this, objections went from deal killers to deal clinchers because instead of me pushing, the prospects started convincing themselves. So I can actually remember a recent story. I was on with a prospect who interrupted my demo and said, this all sounds great, but I've been burned by similar software before. I'm skeptical. Old school selling would have defaulted to, well, we're different. Let me show you testimonials and blah, blah, blah. Not me. AVP me did something different. I took a breath and I said, I hear you. You invested in a solution, didn't meet your expectations, and now it's hard to trust another Promise. Honestly, I'd feel the same way after that experience. So now you've acknowledged and validated. Then I asked, what specifically worried you about that last solution? And what would you need to see this time to feel comfortable? Boom. That's appeal. That opened up the floodgates. He told me everything, how the last vendor overpromised, how the implementation went sideways, how his boss chewed him out, and et cetera, et cetera. I just listened and I took notes. By the time we got to how we could do better, he was practically handing me the roadmap to his trust. All I had to do was address each concern with evidence, like walking him through the onboarding process step by step, sharing a success story of a client who also had a bad experience. Long story short, we closed that deal, not by smashing through the objection, but by understanding the man behind it. That's what this is all about. Selling like a human being, not a commission-chasing robot. People are tired of being sold at. They crave someone who actually listens and guides them to a solution. And guess what? That's exactly what handling objections the right way does. It shows that you care about their concerns instead of just your quota. It builds credibility and trust where old school tactics absolutely destroy it. So one more spicy take before I jump off my soapbox. If you ignore or steamroll objections, you might temporarily avoid an uncomfortable conversation, but you're just delaying the inevitable failure. Those unaddressed concerns will absolutely kill the deal quietly later on. On the flip side, if you lean into objections with curiosity and composure, you differentiate yourself from 90% of the reps out there. In fact, more than half of buyers say a deal-killing vendor could have actually won their business if the sales experience had been better. Read that again. Over 50% of lost deals are because of seller missteps, not product or price. So ouch, that really means huge control over our outcomes. Handling objections with skill and empathy is a massive part of the sales experience. Alrighty, my rant is over. The bottom line, traditional objection handling is broken because it's all about the seller's agenda and ego. What really works is a buyer-centric approach, which is acknowledging their perspective, validating their feelings, and peeling back the core issue so you can solve the right problem. No more salesy sales tactics. Now let's just break down how to do this for each of the big 5 objections one by one and why these approaches actually work. And of course, it's backed by a bit of psychology. Ready? Let's go. Welcome to Why This Works and Why It Doesn't. Real strategies, real results, no sugarcoating. Time to get practical. We're going to dissect the 5 most common B2B objections: price, time, trust, authority, and ROI. For each of them, I'll cover why the objections come up, the wrong way sellers often handle it, and why it falls flat, and then, of course, the right way to do it. So let's go ahead and jump in. All right, so the first one, price objection. It's just too expensive. So why do they say it? Price is the king of objections. When a prospect says it's too expensive, it might mean a few things. Often it's sticker shock or budget constraints for sure, but objections are frequently a proxy for perceived value. In B2B, if the value is crystal clear, businesses can often find budget. So when they balk at the price, it's often because they aren't yet convinced that your solution is worth the cost, or they're comparing it to something else in their mind. It could also be a negotiation tactic, testing a field discount, or an honest fiscal limitation. Our budget got cut this quarter. So the key point is too expensive is rarely about the dollar amount alone. It's about mismatch between cost and perceived benefit. What doesn't work is the knee-jerk response many salespeople have to defend or discount. Defending sounds like, well, our price is actually very competitive when you consider X, Y, and Z features. Or you'll get what you pay for. We're premium. This often turns into a one-sided justification lecture. The prospect tunes out because you've essentially telling them they're wrong or you don't understand or they don't understand the value. Not a great start. The other reaction is immediately discounting. Oh, it's too much? Oh, well, what if we take 10% off? Would that help? This one is even worse. Now that you've signaled that your price was arbitrary or inflated to begin with, and you've put blood in the water, any savvy buyer will push for more concessions. Plus, you've devalued your solution in their eyes. And you know what? You still haven't learned why they felt the price was high. Maybe price wasn't the true blocker at all, and you just needlessly gave away margin. So defending equals you talking past them, and discounting equals you panicking. Neither builds trust or clarifies the real issue. So this is what works instead. Let's apply acknowledge, validate, peel, then reframe the value. So this is how I would handle it's too expensive. Acknowledge. First, echo their concern in a calm, matter-of-fact way. I hear you. It's a significant investment. Just saying that plainly without being defensive, well, it shows you're listening. Maybe even add, budget is important. I respect that. That's it. No rushing to argue. Often, I see the prospect visibly relax at this stage because instead of pushing back, I'm nodding with them. Next, we're going to validate. Legitimatize their feelings. It's smart to be cost conscious, especially for a decision like this. Or I'd be looking hard at the price tag too if I were you to make sure that it's worth it. This is essentially the feel felt part of feel, felt, found, which mirrors acknowledge, validate, peel. And we are modernizing this. You're saying it's normal to feel that way. You might even add a quick anecdote. A lot of our clients initially felt that same way. They had to be sure the ROI was there. This assures them that they're not being difficult or alone in raising the concern. And then peel is the last part. Now ask an open-ended question to uncover the real constraint. Apart from price, what other factors are you considering? Or help me understand when you say expensive. Are you comparing it to an existing budget, or is it more about projecting the ROI? This question is pure gold. It might reveal, for instance, that they have a hard budget cap this quarter or that they need to justify the cost to a board. Or maybe they'll say, we have a quote from a competitor that's 20% less. Aha, now you know it's a competitive comparison. By peeling back, you can turn a vague objection into a specific discussion point that you can tackle. So here's my psychology pro tip. Questions like this leverage the consultative approach. You're inviting them to elaborate rather than going on the defensive. It engages the prospect in solving the problem with you. Remember, research shows that 53% of buyers saying a losing vendor could have won if the sales experience had been better. And a big part of better experience is feeling heard and understood, which is exactly what you accomplish by acknowledging and asking questions instead of steamrolling. Now it's time to respond with value. Only after doing AVP do I respond with specifics, and I tailor it back on what I learned. If it's a budget timing issue, maybe I explore payment plans or smaller start options without immediately giving a discount. If it's a comparison issue of competitor X is cheaper, I focus on what's different and the ROI. Absolutely, they might undercut on price, but from what our clients tell us, they often end up paying more in the long run because they need extra add-ons or more support. So let's look at the total cost of ownership. By the way, transparency is absolutely key. 73% of B2B buyers say transparent pricing is very important in choosing a vendor. So I never bash competitors. I just highlight where we deliver more value. If the concern is ROI, I might share a case. Our average client sees 3x return in the first year, turning a $100K investment into a $300K in value. For example, blank client felt it was way too pricey, but they found that within 6 months, the efficiency gains alone paid for it. Notice that I snuck in a success story there and delivered only after I fully understood their worry. Now, the final piece is to check in and confirm. Finally, I might ask, does that address your concern over cost, or is there any other aspect you want to dig into? This aligns with the last step. And I want to make sure that I've nailed it if we can explore more. By doing all of this, you accomplish a few things. You show the prospect you're on their side. You gather intel about what too expensive really means, and you reinforce the value relative to whatever benchmark they care about. You turn price from a point of contention into a discussion of investment and returns. And importantly, you do it collaboratively and not combatively. So why does this work psychologically? Is that humans have a strong need to feel heard and validated before they'll consider another viewpoint. When you acknowledge and validate price objection, you lower the buyer's defenses. They no longer see you as a pushy salesperson, but as a partner in the problem solving. Then by focusing on value and ROI, you can tap into the principle of loss aversion. People worry about wasting money, so show them how not doing this might actually cost them more. The missed opportunity. So for instance, if they don't invest, maybe they'll continue leaking a certain amount of money in inefficiencies. That flips the script from a price to cost of inaction. But you can only introduce that after you've built trust through the AVP process. Quick stat to remember, a study found that the first vendor to successfully quantify value for the buyer wins the deal 74% of the time. So rather than slashing price, be the seller who clearly qualifies the value. It beats being the cheapest, trust me. Let's jump into number two. Number two, the timing objection. Now's not a good time. We're too busy. Circle back next quarter. On the surface, this seems like a stalling tactic or polite brush off, and sometimes it is, but often a time objection actually masks deeper issues, lack of urgency, fear of change, or competing priorities. In B2B, implementing a new solution is a big deal. Prospects worry about the disruption. Will this eat up my team's bandwidth? What if we bite off more than we can chew? There's also status quo bias that comes into play. People prefer to stick with what's familiar, even if it's suboptimal, because change is effort. So no time right now, well, that might mean I'm not yet convinced it's worth reprioritizing our focus. It also literally could be scheduling. Maybe a key stakeholder is on leave till next quarter, or budget won't free up until a certain date. The important thing is not to assume it's just an excuse. You need to find out if it's genuine or a smokescreen for someone or for something else, like doubt in your solution's value or trust. What doesn't work, the worst way to handle no time is to argue with it or diminish it. For example, don't say, well, if you really want to improve, you'll make time. Or, well, this is exactly why you need us because you're so busy. I've heard it all. I have reviewed probably 1,000 sales calls up to this point, and this is a really common thing that happens. So while conceptually that might be true, coming from the rep, it lands as tone deaf. It effectively belittles whatever the prospect has going on. Another fail, pushing ultimatums like prices are going up, so you better act now, or this deal is only good for this month. High pressure tactics to force urgency can seriously backfire, especially in B2B where multiple stakeholders are involved. If they feel coerced, they'll walk away on principle. And if no time was really no trust, you just confirm their suspicion that you care more about a quick sale than their situation. Lastly, ignoring the timing comment and continuing the pitch as usual is a big no-no. If you plow ahead like you didn't hear them, not now, you appear either desperate or deaf, possibly both. So what works instead? Empathy and problem-solving mode. And that's where we go back to AVP. Let's try this. Acknowledge. I understand timing is everything, and you've got a lot on your plate. Simple, genuine. You immediately show you respect their schedule and priorities. Sometimes I'll even mirror their language. If they said, we're slammed this quarter, I'll say, sounds like this quarter is slammed with other priorities. I get it. By acknowledging the objection head on, this builds your credibility as someone who listens. Sadly, rarely, if you remember, 69% of buyers expect sales reps to listen to their needs, but many reps don't. Be the rep that actually listens. Now it's time to validate. It makes sense not to add something major when resources are stretched thin, or no one wants to overload their team. I wouldn't either. This is where you empathize deeply. Maybe share one of my other clients actually postponed our project by a month because their fiscal year felt crazy. We adjusted it and it worked out. This shows that you don't just care about the sale, but you also care about their success. You're basically saying, I hear you, you're being prudent. The prospect's shoulders will drop a little, and you're knowing that you're not going to bulldoze them. Now, lastly, with Peel, you want to ask a follow-up question. So now we want to qualify the nature of the timing issue. Can I ask what upcoming period might be better for you? And what would need to be in place to make it make sense then? Or is the timing issue due to workload, budget cycle, or something else I should be aware of? This question achieves a few things. One, it differentiates. And if it's really a scheduling roadblock, like, for example, our team is tied up with big implementation till June versus a soft brush off, like, just not now, thanks. Two, it prompts them to think about the solution. If they say maybe Q3 when we have the budget, that's concrete and we can work with it, set a follow-up, etc. If they hesitate or can't identify when it would be a good time, it could indicate a deeper hesitation that we're not voicing. I might follow up gently and say, it sounds like even next quarter might be tough. Is it primarily the bandwidth to implement, or are there other concerns about moving forward? You can see how I invite them to bring up hidden objections. Maybe they'll say, well, to be honest, we're not 100% convinced this will work. Aha! Now we are getting somewhere. That's actually trust and an ROI objection in disguise. By peeling, we often uncover the real blocker. So addressing the underlying issue and creating a healthy urgency. Depending on what I learn, I tailor the response. If it's legitimately about bandwidth or scheduling, I shift into problem solving. What if we handle 80% of the implementation for you? We could also schedule training after your busy season so it doesn't interfere. There might be ways to ease the load. Essentially, I try to mitigate the time and effort burden. For example, I might outline a phased rollout. Let's start with a pilot team next month. Very light, just to get in some quick wins. Broader implementation can happen when your team has some breathing room. By doing this, I remove the we're too busy barrier. If it's about budget, timing, perhaps I propose a flexible start. We can do the prep work now and Billing later when your new budget kicks in. If that's feasible for you, we'll get this done. Get creative, but stay within what's reasonable. Now, if my questions reveal that timing is more of like a nice way to say I'm not convinced, then I know I haven't demonstrated enough value or addressed the risk. At that point, I pivot, resurface the pain or goal that sparked the conversation in the first place. Earlier, you mentioned that your customer churn is rising and that you need to fix it this year. If we wait until next quarter, that's another 3 months of churn eating into revenue. Let's talk about what a 3-month delay might cost versus getting a solution in place right now. Notice I'm not forcing them. I'm helping them weigh a business decision. This is where the concept of FOMO can come into play, right? Fear of missing out and cost of delay. It's just like, this is one of my favorite things, FOMO. Now, fear of missing out is not missing out in like the opportunity, but fear of missing out in fixing the problem that they have. People do react to loss aversion. If I can quantify or vividly paint the opportunity cost of waiting, it can create urgency organically. For instance, our analytical tool could save your team 20 hours a week right now. Over 3 months, that's 240 hours of lost productivity by waiting. That can hit home. But if I deliver it after I've shown I've emphasized with the situation, so it doesn't feel like a scare tactic, more like what I'm doing to look out for them, that's when you're going to see the success. So here's another compelling data point. 86% of B2B purchases stall in the buying process, often because the value wasn't clear or priorities shifted. Our job as sellers is to prevent stalls by continuing connecting our solution to their top priorities. If timing is an issue, I ensure our solution is tied to a priority. If it's not, I can either make it so or accept that they're not a serious prospect right now. And our next steps is, suppose after all of this, they still say, we really just can't do this now, but we are interested. Okay, I respect that. We lock in a concrete next step. Understood. Let's pencil a tentative strategy call for the first week of Q2 when things ease up. And I'll check in mid-March to firm that up. Does that work? By getting an agreement on next steps, you differentiate yourself from like 99% of salespeople who walk away with a limp, okay, call you later. You show you're professional and persistent without being pushy. And because you handled the conversation with respect, they'll be much more receptive when you do follow up. In essence, handling the time objection is about being a facilitator, not a forcer. You respect their timing concerns, seek to understand them, and then help the prospect see the decision in a broader perspective. You either find a creative way to make it now feasible, or you schedule later with mutual commitment. So why does this work? Well, by emphasizing that their busyness, you tap into reciprocity. You're giving them the understanding. They're more likely to give you information or consideration in return by highlighting the cost of inaction. So once you've earned the right to do so, you leverage that natural aversion to loss without coming off as fear-mongering. And by planning next steps, you keep the momentum. Many deals die simply because of indecision and inertia. But when you partner with the prospect to navigate timing, you avoid the black hole of, I'll call you back in 6 months, which often never actually happens. You're basically selling the value of acting sooner in a way that aligns with their interests. That's how you overcome no time and turn it into let's find time. All right, so now we're jumping into number 3, which is the trust objection. we're not sure about you or your company. So, why did they say it? Well, see, the thing is trust is huge in B2B sales and frankly, all of sales. The trust objection can surface in different ways. Sometimes it's explicit. You're a newer vendor. How do I know you'll deliver? Or we got burned by a similar provider, so we're skeptical. Other times it's subtle, like lots of probing questions about your experience or pointed comments that sounds like this sounds too good to be true. What it really means is the prospect isn't fully confident in you, your product, or your company. Maybe your brand isn't a household name just yet. Maybe they had a bad past experience, or maybe you personally haven't established credibility with them. Could be as simple as they don't feel you understand their industry or you're overpromising. In B2B deals, trust is everything. B2B buyers are risking their reputation and business outcomes by choosing you. So if any red flags ping in their radar, you'll get the trust objection. Interestingly, trust objections often underlie other objections. A price or ROI objection can hide lack of trust. I don't believe the ROI you claim. So your job is to recognize when trust or lack thereof is the real issue at hand. So this is what doesn't work though. The worst reaction to a trust objection is getting defensive or dismissive. For example, if a prospect says, "We're not sure your solution will do that," and you bristle and reply, "What do you mean? Of course it will." Well, we're the best in the industry in the market. That's a fast way to lose any remaining trust. Also, hugely ineffective. Overloading them with marketing fluff as proof. Here, let me send you 10 case studies and a 50-slide deck about how awesome we are. That's just noise. And if trust is low, they're going to take your glossy collateral at face value anyway. Another pitfall is making promises you can't guarantee, like, "I assure you, nothing will go wrong," or "Trust me, you're in good hands," said every shady salesperson ever. Ironically, saying "trust me" has the opposite effect. So does over-polished, too good to be true talk? Maybe buyers have radars for inauthenticity. If they suspect that you're hiding something or sugarcoating, they'll retreat. One more. Don't rush the relationship. Trust objections often require bringing in third-party validation or just giving them a bit of time. If you try to bulldoze, like, "Look, you just have to take the leap of faith," you'll likely, faceplant. What works instead is to earn it. Trust must be earned through transparency, a track record, and empathy. So let's go ahead and apply the AVP model. First of all, acknowledge. I hear that our credibility is a concern for you, or it's a big decision, and it sounds like you're not 100% confident in us yet. I get it. Acknowledging a trust objection can feel a bit like stepping into an awkward space, but it's powerful. You're basically saying out loud the elephant in the room. You're not sure you trust me or us. That level of honesty is disarming, which is what we want. It tells the prospect, "I'm not afraid to discuss this," which ironically builds trust. Now let's go ahead and validate. You should absolutely do your due diligence. I'd be cautious too in your shoes. This is key. You're telling them that they're right to be careful. If they had a previous bad experience, it's completely understandable you'd be skeptical after what happened to you with the previous vendor. I would feel the same way. If your company is newer or smaller, it makes sense that you want to ensure will be a reliable partner long term. Many of our clients felt that way initially. Notice the subtle use of making sure that they feel heard. This shows that you can empathize and they're not wrong for questioning. Remember, 81% of buyers express dissatisfaction with their current providers, meaning a lot of folks have been disappointed before. Acknowledging that reality scores you points as some who gets that concern. Now we're going to peel. Here, you want to pinpoint what specifically they mistrust or need as reassurance. Is there a particular area of risk you're most concerned about? For example, is it whether we can deliver X result or our experience in your industry or something else, or simply what would help you feel more comfortable. My personal favorite. This invites them to lay it on the table. Maybe they'll say, we just haven't heard of your company before, or your solution is newer technology and we're not sure it's proven, or we had an implementation go wrong before, so we're wary. Each answer guides you to a tailored response. Also, asking this shows humility. You're not assuming that will make them trust you. You're asking them. That is respect. So when you respond, once again, you're building that trust. So now address their specific gaps with evidence and transparency. There are a few tactics. Third-party proof. If they're worried because they don't know your company, bring in the big guns. Reference to other customers, especially reputable names in their industry if you have them. Totally fair, we're growing quickly, but still becoming known. By the way, 79% of the time, the CFO is the final decision maker. And in companies like yours, we've successfully gotten CFO buy-in by delivering results. In fact, client A and client B, both similar profile to you, have been working with us for 3 years. Would it help if you talk to one of them about their experience with us? Offering a reference call or testimonial can be huge, but notice that I cited a stat about CFOs. Just notice that I did cite the stat about the CFO so that they can understand the landscape. It's an example of how leveraging data to build credibility and how to show that we know our stuff. Now, the thing is sometimes you won't always have someone who's going to jump in on your behalf in order to share. So there's great times to use testimonials and there's some other times that aren't great. And quite frankly, case studies and testimonials need to be used in the right order, which is why in this episode, I've used some examples of when you shouldn't use them and when you should. So if someone's going to get on the phone with another person, that's amazing. That's like the best it can be. But if not, let's just use success stories and make sure that they're backed up and, they're proven and they're reliable. I personally love interviewing clients at the end of an engagement or during an engagement or whenever they have time, and then using that as a way to share the story because it's coming out of their mouth and it's second best to them actually talking with them directly. So sharing success stories, you have to make sure that you share a concise anecdote relevant to their concern. If they worry about results, one client felt that same way, unsure if we delivered. They gave us a small pilot project and we hit 110% of the target. They've since expanded to a full rollout, and I can share that case study if you'd like. Real numbers and outcomes help convert skepticism into optimism because it's not just you saying, it's evidence. And of course, transparency about the process. If trust is about process or implementation, like they'll worry you'll make a mess, walk them through your plan in detail. Let's go step by step on how we implement. We have a dedicated team, a 24-hour support line, and we do weekly check-ins during onboarding. Here's our project roadmap. Does this align with what you'd expect? Showing them you have a structured, thorough approach can absolutely relieve this fear. And admit limitations if needed. Sometimes the gutsiest trust-building move is honesty about something you can't do. So, for example, you mentioned concern if we can handle a project your size. It's true we haven't done a 10,000 seat deployment in one go. Our largest so far has been 5,000. I want to be upfront about that. What I can tell you, though, is that we've invested heavily in scaling our infrastructure, and we would like to roll out in phases to ensure quality. I'm confident we can meet your needs, but I understand it's a leap. Paradoxically, acknowledging a limitation increases credibility. It shows you're not just blowing smoke. Also, use stats or certifications if you have it. Like we have a 98.5% customer retention rate. We're ISO certified, et cetera, et cetera. But don't just rattle off allocates that don't matter to them. Focus on what they said they need to feel comfortable. And then you'll invite for verification. So after providing reassurance, I invite them to verify. Does that address your concern? Or is there another area that you would like more evidence on? Or would it help to see X in action? Speak to Y or review Z. Give them control to ask for more proof. This shows you're confident and have nothing to hide. Sometimes I'll even encourage, you should absolutely speak with our reference customers and grill them. I'll set it up. Now, once again, like I said before, if you don't have that availability, case studies can't work here. But this level of openness and, it just breaks down the walls. It makes people want to talk to you and they believe you more. It's like saying, go ahead, check our homework, right? They probably will. And that's great because if you truly deliver, your happy customers will do a better job selling on trust than you ever could. So why does this work? Well, because trust objections are an emotional, psychological hurdle. You must demonstrate trustworthiness through actions, not just words. Acknowledging and validating the concern without ever getting defensive immediately sets you apart. You become an ally discussing a mutual challenge. How can we make you comfortable rather than adversaries? By asking what they need, you appeal to their sense of control and respect their perspective. Providing tailored proof, then you hit the logical side of their brain. Okay, there's evidence, not just promises. Also, consistency and follow through truly matter. If you'll send information or set up a call, do it promptly. Every small commitment kept is a brick in the trust wall. Conversely, you're back to square one or worse. So remember, trust builds slowly and shatters quickly. So throughout all objection handling, maintain honesty. If you don't know an answer, say it so and promise to find out. If something is outside your scope, admit it. Buyers can smell BS and they appreciate candor. When I was an individual contributor, I used to say something like, that's a great question. I don't want to give you an inaccurate answer off the cuff. Let me confirm with my engineering team and I'll get back with you tomorrow. Far from thinking less of me, stakeholders appreciated that. I wasn't just winging it because guess what? Transparency is rare. Being one of the few who practices it is instantly trustworthy and it differentiates you. All right, Rascals, let me ask you this. How much money have you wasted replacing shoes, sneakers, or even bags that could have lasted way longer if only you'd been taken better care of them? I know for me, running from meetings to kids' activities, life gets messy fast. And that's why I always have Jason Mark Quick Wipes on hand. Jason Mark is trusted care to help you get the most out of what you wear. They're not just about cleaning. They're about protecting what you love while protecting the planet. Their wipes are now 100% plant-based and plastic-free, made from renewable lyocell fibers. They're individually wrapped so you can toss them in your bag, your car, or like me, your kids' backpacks. And it's not just convenience. Jason Mark is part of the worldwide B Corp movement, meeting the highest standards for social and environmental impact. They're EPA Safer Choice certified, so you know the formulas are safe for your family. And their products are USDA, bio-based and certified biodegradable. That means no harmful junk like PFAS or VOCs. Just high-performance care that keeps your stuff looking fresh while doing right by the planet. Personally, as a busy mom and entrepreneur, Quick Wipes are my favorite. They've saved my sneakers from coffee spills, playground dust, you name it. One wipe and I'm ready to walk into my next meeting looking sharp. So here's the deal. Go to jasonmark.com and use promo code Revenue Rascals at checkout for 25% off your order. One time per customer. Again, that's jasonmark.com, code Revenue Rascals. And remember, this podcast is free thanks to sponsors like Jason Mark. I'm ungating sales strategies people pay me six figures for. So go support them, grab your Quick Wipes or your favorite product, and keep your kicks looking fresh. All right, we're jumping into number 4, which is authority objection. I need to consult with my boss, team, committee, spouse, etc. We've all heard it, right? So why do they say it? Well, in B2B sales, rarely is one person the sole decision maker, especially for large enterprise deals. When you hear things like, I need to run this by the CFO, or our board has to approve this, or even the classic, I need to talk it over with my partner, that's the authority objection. It means your contact either doesn't have full signing power or they do but want consensus. This objection arises because big decisions often involve multiple stakeholders. And according to recent data, the average B2B buying group now includes at least 10 to 11 stakeholders. Hello, buying committees. And 79% of purchases, the CFO holds final decision. So even if you've convinced your champion, they're likely going to have to convince the CFO or others. So hearing, I have to consult X is completely normal. It can also sometimes be a polite way of saying, I'm not convinced enough to champion this internally. Essentially a hybrid of authority and trust ROI objection. But most often, it's literal. They need other people's buy-in. What doesn't work is the rookie mistake here is to treat this objection as an attempt to brush you off and then try to pressure them to skip their process. For example, don't say, can't you make this decision on your own? Sounds totally condescending. Or, well, let's get them on the call right now and close this when the stakeholder isn't even prepared. That can embarrass or annoy your contact. Another bad move is disregarding the chain of command and trying to go around your contact straight to their boss without permission. That's a trust burner. If your champion feels like you're going over their head, they'll absolutely resent it. Also, simply saying, okay, have them call me and leaving it entirely in their hands is not effective either. If you make your internal champion do all the heavy lifting to sell your solution internally without support, you're likely toast. And finally, begging, could you please put a good word in right away, or showing desperation with the higher up will absolutely undermine your positioning. So what works instead? Enable and collaborate with your champion. When they say they need to consult someone, your job is to empower them to successfully, or even better, be part of that conversation in a helpful way. So here is the AVP strategy. Acknowledge. Absolutely. I figured you'd want to loop in the boss committee. Acknowledge the reality of multi-level approval. If anything, I sometimes proactively bring it up before they do. Typically for a solution like this, folks involved, their CFO or IT lead. Does that align with your process? This way, when they do say it, it's expected, not a curveball. But if it comes up as an objection, I respect that. This is a decision that impacts more than just you. So getting CFO or team on board is absolutely important. Now it's time to validate. I'd ask the higher ups too if I were you in your position. Now, first of all, you have to have a cheeky relationship if you're going to say higher ups, okay? You need to be careful with everybody's ego, but it depends on your personality. And so depending on who you're talking to, you can be a little cheeky. Their buy-in is crucial, or it's good that your team weighs in on decisions like this. The best outcomes happen when all stakeholders are comfortable. This shows that you see their internal process as legitimate, which it is. You might add, many of our successful deployments have an internal champion like you, plus an executive sponsor. So involving them early is definitely the right move. Essentially, you're framing it as a smart business practice rather than a hurdle. Now it's time to peel. Now clarify the decision-making landscape. Ask, can you walk me through your decision process from here? Who else will be involved? And what are their main concerns likely to be? Or what does your boss typically care about the most in investments like ROI, risk, strategic fit? This not only tells you who and what you need to address, but engages your contact in strategizing with you. You transform from a salesperson to an ally and helping them sell internally. Depending on their response, try to gauge if your contact is the champion with influence or just a messenger. If they sound confident in selling it internally and have a plan, great. If they seem unsure or not influential, like I'll send it to my boss or we'll see what happens, then you know you need to bolster their ability or find a way to get in front of the real decision makers. Empowering the champion is a big part of this. This is where you provide tools or offers to support the internal sale. So, for example, leave behind materials. You can also go in for third-party data, like we have talked before, for more validation. You can offer to present or meet. Would it make sense for me to join a meeting with you and your CFO to answer any questions directly? I'm happy to do a short, high-level overview for them. Many times a champion will absolutely appreciate this because you're taking work off their plate. Other times they might just prefer to talk to the boss first privately, especially if they're still not sold in themselves. If they decline the joint meeting offer, respect that, but at least you offered. Strategy alignment. If multiple stakeholders like IT or operations need buy-in, offer to address their specific concerns. Your head of IT might want to know about security and integration. If it's useful, I can have our CTO hop on a call with them to cover those bases. And also, of course, addressing the underlying issues. Sometimes I need to consult X is partially a stalling process because the person themselves isn't fully convinced yet. If I sense that, I might gently probe. Before you take it to your boss, is there anything we haven't covered that you think they'll ask? I want to make sure you feel 100% confident with the proposal too. This invites them to voice any lingering doubt. And if they say, well, yeah, then you know where to go. And of course, follow through. Once we map out a plan, you've got to follow through. This is a really, really big part of it. And it's fun to be that strategic partner. So enjoy this part of selling. And then you always have to plan the next checkpoint. You have to secure that follow-up and authority step. When would it make sense for us to reconnect and see what feedback your CFO or team had? Absolutely key. So why does this work? By embracing the multi-level stakeholder reality, you show respect for their process with hierarchy. Instead of seeing the authority objection as a brick wall, you see it as a door and you ask for the key. When you involve yourself in helping your champion, you effectively multiply your sales force. They become an advocate rather than just a go-between. And you can also demonstrate confidence. That confidence is absolutely contagious. Also consider the psychology. People want to look good in front of their bosses. So if you make your contact look good, they've done a thorough homework and found a great solution. So you transform at this point from vendor to partner. All right. And we are wrapping this up with number 5, the ROI objection. All right. So what's the ROI? Will this actually pay off? Why they say it? Well, especially for large B2B investments, the question of return on investment is inevitable. And, I've talked about this in multiple episodes before this. Make sure you go check why time doesn't sell anymore. That's a killer episode. You'll want to listen in. So this objection might be phrased as, we're not convinced we'll see the value, or show me the numbers. Will this really move the needle? Or bluntly, the ROI isn't there. This often comes from economic focused buyers like CFOs, finance folks, founders, etc., or just really savvy decision makers who need to justify the spend quantitatively. In big deals, it usually requires a business case. And if the buyer doesn't see a clear, credible ROI, the default decision is no decision, because doing nothing has perceived ROI of zero cost, even if it has its own hidden costs. Sometimes ROI objections mask fear of risk. What if we spend all this and it doesn't work? I'll look bad. It's tied to trust, but specifically trust in the outcomes you promise. Also note, in times of tighter budgets or economic uncertainty, ROI scrutiny goes way up. If it's not mission critical, it's getting axed. In fact, 87% of tech buyers adjusted their process to only by mission critical solutions. So you better believe ROI is top of mind. What doesn't work is hand wavy or vague answers to an ROI objection, and that will absolutely kill you. For instance, do not say, oh, the ROI will be great, don't worry. Like, that is not going to work at all. Also, an overly technical or feature-based response can also fail here. Throwing more features at them won't address the core issue that they want, dollar and cent justification. Another mistake, arguing their math. If a prospect says, I don't see how this gives ROI, and you respond with, well, your calculator's wrong, not good. Okay? Don't do that. Even if you're correct and they're wrong, it's better to collaborate on the math, not to duel over it. Finally, ignoring the objection or deferring it, well, I think you know where that's going to go. So what works instead? Make the ROI super clear, credible, and co-created with the buyer. And here is the AVP framework for that. Acknowledge. Great question. You absolutely should ask about ROI. Let's dive into that. Treat this not as an objection to brush off, but as a very valid step in their due diligence. Show enthusiasm and just help them do it. Validate. I'd be skeptical of any investment without seeing the potential return. It's significant spend and you need to justify it. You might add, a lot of our clients felt the same need to see the proof before signing or even acknowledge the risk. It's true. Any investment comes with risks and you need to ensure the upside is worth it. This aligns you with them. You're basically on the same team. And it's surprising how often this step is skipped in these ROI conversations. Sellers jump to spreadsheets without first saying, hey, you're right to demand the justification. By validating, you soften their stance from cross-examining to collaborative. Peel. Ask questions to understand their metrics and expectations. What does ROI look like for you in this case? Is there a specific threshold or KPI your leadership needs to see? And over what time frame do you typically measure success for an investment like this? Absolutely crucial to expand here so that you can match your ROI delivery to exactly what they need. And you'll respond with collaborative ROI analysis. Roll up your sleeves and get those numbers together. Shall we sketch this out? And what you'll get is agreement on the logic. So after walking through the numbers, I'll ask, do these assumptions and this range of outcomes feel reasonable to you? Based on this, does the investment make sense? I want them to say it back to me. Yes. If these numbers hold true, then this is a no-brainer. That's when you know you've overcome the objection. They see the vision. If they still hesitate or have a yeah, but, then either the ROI isn't attractive enough, in which case maybe your solution isn't the right fit, or you need to sharpen your pencil on the price. Or they still doubt the inputs, in which case maybe loop in a third-party validation for reference. Would it help to speak with the client who've achieved these results, like we've talked about before? I prefer case studies over go talk to a client, but I'm giving everyone options here. So why this works is it appeals to both the logical and the emotional brain. Logically, you're providing numbers and evidence, which is what a rational buyer needs to justify the decision. Emotionally, by involving them, you give them ownership of the ROI projection. It's no longer some sales rep's claim. It's we calculated it and it appears feasible. All right, so now we've covered the big 5 objections in depth: price, time, trust, authority, and ROI. You've seen a theme, right? Every single one was handled with the same flavor of acknowledge, validate, peel, and respond. It's a rinse and repeat formula because it's grounded in human psychology and genuine conversation, not gimmicks. Whether the concern is money, timing, belief, stakeholders, or proof of value, the first step is always what? Empathize and understand before you respond. To quickly recap why this approach beats the old hacky scripts, you lower defenses by showing empathy and listening. People open up instead of shutting down. You get to real issues by asking questions. Often the first objection isn't the root cause. You address the actual concern with tailored information, not generic rebuttal. You build trust and credibility through the process. You're showing you're a partner, not a pushy peddler. And the results? Smoother sales conversations, more transparent dialogue, and ultimately higher close rates with customers who feel good about saying yes. Instead of feeling like they got sold to, they feel like they've made an informed decision with a trusted advisor. And that's how you overcome objections like a revenue rascal with bold confidence, genuine care, and solid expertise. Let's bring it home. Rascal Wrap-Up time. Key takeaways and a resource to keep you winning. All right, now we are going to wrap up. Now you'll notice that I didn't do the coaching corner this time because this episode was more of a masterclass on objections. So what I would absolutely love is some real examples that you can submit now. You may have not had the opportunity to submit for this episode, but I would love to hear from you. So this is my invite. Send an email to hello@michelleterpstra.com. Tell me about a recent objection that you had, and I'm going to pick a few to respond to live, and you'll get a personalized feedback on your exact scenario. I can't wait to read them all. And remember, friends, please leave a review, please rate the podcast, and of course, share with a friend. Thanks for listening to Revenue Rascals, where we turn bold ideas into predictable revenue and prove that breaking the rules can still build empires. If you love what you heard, do me a favor. Tap the links in the show notes to support our sponsors. They're the ones keeping this show free so I can keep ungating the six-figure strategies that help you scale faster, lead smarter, and take more freedom home with you. And hey, if you think you'd make an incredible guest or know someone who's built something worth studying, email me at hello@michelleterpstra.com. And until next time, stay sharp, stay bold, and stay just a little bit rascal.